Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast. We cover everything Major League, from spring training to the World Series. We've got your favorite club covered, from New York to Boston to LA. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the GSMC Base Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Patrick Kenny, and today we're going to be talking about the biggest story over the last few days, the Trevor Bauer signing to the Los Angeles Dodgers. Then after that, we're going to be taking a look at the free agency landscape, seeing who signed where, who's still left, and who might not be signed. And then in the third segment, we're going to be taking it to who might make the biggest impact on their team. Is it going to be Trevor Bauer? Or could it be even a trade that might be the biggest? We're going to find out over there in that third segment. And then finally, in the final part of this podcast, we're going to be today discussing what are the top 10 baseball movies of all time. And of course, I have a list. I got you guys covered. Don't even worry about it. We're going to get into it right now. And welcome in, everybody, to the GSMC Base Podcast. I want to thank everybody for coming in, and let's just get right into this first segment. We're obviously discussing Trevor Bauer and his massive signing to the LA Dodgers. Now, I think Trevor Bauer did this for a few reasons. One, obviously, it being his home, and I know that he has gone on record by saying that he didn't want to sign a very long-term contract. And if I'm remembering correctly, which I should be, that Trevor Bauer has player options on his second and third deal. So the entire deal is worth $102 million. And he is absolutely deserving of that. He just won the Cy Young Award and helped make the Reds a playoff contenders, at least for that year, and he was definitely a massive part of that. Now, the first year of his contract is about $40 million, and in year two, which he has a player option for, is worth $45 million. And then year three, obviously, is the rest of that $102 million deal. Now, I think it's obvious now that the Dodgers, who just won the World Series, obviously, are the overwhelming favorite to at least make it to the World Series again, if not end up winning. Now, Trevor Bauer, I think, is going to be the number 2 behind Walker Buehler. I don't know if he is going to be that opening day guy. He very well may be, but at least what Trevor Bauer has shown us is the potential to be the reigning Cy Young Award winner, but he also has the potential to post a ERA over 6, like he did just the year before with the Reds. And the Indians as well. And I think that Walker Buehler is a little bit more consistent than Trevor Bauer. And that's just because I think that, I mean, obviously I don't know why he's more consistent than Trevor Bauer, but Trevor Bauer seems to not have his best stuff every so often. And it's because of that he ends up as, I think, the number 2 guy. I think he is going to be the number 2 ahead of Clayton Kershaw, just because Kershaw is more toward the latter end of his career. And because of that, that's why I think that Trevor Bauer is going to be the number 2 behind Walker Buehler, but that doesn't mean that the staff for the Dodgers is any less impressive. And I think that watching the Dodgers and Padres play is going to be must-watch baseball just because of how talented those two teams are. And I think that both of those teams are going to end up being at least competitive. I can definitely see the Padres end up in the World Series, and baseball is weird like that. Stuff can go from one way or another with the swing of a bat. And it's not always the pitcher's fault, and sometimes the hitter just gets lucky. And that might be the difference between these two teams. Both of these two teams are stacked. But before we discuss how the Dodgers and Trevor Bauer are going to match up with the Padres, we also have to look out the East Coast and see the Mets. And I think that Trevor Bauer, one of the reasons that he chose the Dodgers instead of the Mets is because I think he does like that spotlight. I think he thinks that it's going to be easier for him to try and get the number one starting ace role for the Dodgers instead of the Mets, just because the Mets have Noah Syndergaard and they also have Jacob deGrom, and I think that deGrom has proven to be a better pitcher than Trevor Bauer over the last 2 years, and I think arguably that you could say that deGrom maybe should have won the Cy Young last year. They might be doing in the MLB a sort of like, oh, we already know how good you are, let's spread the wealth a little bit kind of thing. Like how a lot of people, or how LeBron James in the NBA was definitely the best player in the league, but he didn't win every single MVP. Or Michael Jordan in the 90s, he was the best player in the league, but he didn't always win the MVP. And I think that's what is the situation happening with the Mets. And in fact, I think maybe even Syndergaard is a more consistent and more consistently dominant than Trevor Bauer. And that's not to say that Trevor Bauer isn't good. I mean, he just won the Cy Young. I just think that part of the reason that he decided to go to LA, other than it also being his home, because he obviously grew up in LA, and he also went to UCLA with Garrett Cole, his arch rival, so to speak, in New York. That might also be another reason he didn't want to have to see Garrett Cole and live that close to him, maybe. But I think that the Mets are going to be fine without getting Trevor Bauer. I think that they've added a lot of good pieces. Obviously, if they had been able to get Trevor Bauer, I think it would have made an important impact in how they would have been perceived. But the Mets did just trade for Carlos Carrasco and Francisco Lindor, and that's going to give the Mets a really good third option, maybe even a fourth option. And the Mets are definitely going to be good. They also signed, and we'll get into this a little bit later, they also signed Trevor May, who is going to give them some very, very much needed bullpen help. But let's bring it back to the Dodgers and Trevor Bauer against the Padres. And the Padres have one of the best pitching rotations of all time, and I would maybe say that I wouldn't necessarily say it's as good as the Cleveland Indians rotation just 2 years ago with Corey Kluber, Trevor Bauer, Mike Clevenger, Carlos Carrasco, and Shane Bieber, just because all of those guys are just so good. But with that being said, the Padres have added some weapons to their arsenal. Now, they're not going to have Mike Clevenger this year because he has Tommy John, and he's going to be rehabbing that throughout the year. I think there's a possibility that if they make the playoffs, that he'll maybe make an appearance here or there. But for the most part, he's probably done for the season. And because of that, the Padres aren't going to be as good as if they had Mike Clevenger. Now, they did add Hugh Darvish and Blake Snell in some pretty big deals that they got. They had to give up a few pieces, but I think with who they already have on their team and the starting pitching that they just added, Hugh Darvish had a great year last year. Obviously, Blake Snell is one of the top pitchers in the league. It's going to be interesting to see how Blake Snell translates his game from the AL, where he's been his whole career with the Rays, to the NL, where he is going to have to bat and he's going to have to face pitchers, which are going to be a little bit easier to face than a guy who is literally paid money just to hit. And because of that, I think it's going to be just utter pandemonium when these two teams take the field. And I know I'm going to be watching almost every single game that these guys go out there and play. But one reason I think that Trevor Bauer went to Los Angeles specifically is because of his social media company and his brand Momentum. And I think that he chose LA just because that's where you go to get that kind of thing done. LeBron James did it. That's one of the reasons that he chose the Lakers when he left Cleveland the second time. He wanted to help build his brand and his media company. And I think Trevor Bauer maybe saw that and was like, hey, that doesn't sound like too bad of an idea. I get to play for one of the most storied franchises in all of sports with the Dodgers, and I'm in LA, so I get to help launch my media company and grow that company so much further. And they have some really, really interesting bits online on YouTube and stuff with Watch Momentum, where Trevor Bauer, one of them is called Watch Momentum's Bauer Bites, and Bauer invites other players over, and they discuss how they got to where they were, when they first discovered their love for baseball, what was the worst experience they had playing baseball, these kind of things. And I think because of that, you end up with Trevor Bauer going to the Dodgers. And there are a number of reasons why Trevor Bauer chose the Dodgers, but signing that deal actually put the Dodgers in a pretty tough place because the Dodgers now are missing a key piece because of free agency, not because of Trevor Bauer. But with that $200 million, or over $200 million, I should say, over the luxury cap that the Dodgers are, it's going to make it really, really hard for Justin Turner to re-sign with the Dodgers. And now the Dodgers have come out and said that they want to re-sign Justin Turner just because of how key a piece he is to how good they are. He's incredible defensively and especially offensively. But because the Dodgers are so much over that luxury cap, it's hard to think that they're going to want to go much, much more, especially after the hits that they took in revenue. Every MLB team took major hits in revenue because of COVID and because they weren't allowing fans into the stadiums and things like that, that every major sports team and every sport league lost money. And not a little bit of money either. They lost a lot of money. But right now, the Dodgers only have one active third baseman by the name of Edwin Ross, and he's only had 76 at-bats in his entire career. Now, do I think that that's necessarily a bad thing? Absolutely not. You can find diamonds in the rough during spring training, which might happen. But I think the biggest part of, or the most interesting part about all that is if they don't sign Justin Turner and they're not able to retain him and he goes to the Braves or the Nationals or something like that, that they're going to have a rookie there. And the Dodgers have had some major success with their rookies. Take Corey Seager, Jock Peterson, Yasiel Puig. For some reason, when the Dodgers call up guys to the bigs as rookies, they're ready to make an impact. And maybe the Dodgers have a guy that they can move to third base. Like Max Muncy is at first base. They could move Max Muncy over there, and they could maybe move Cody Bellinger over to first base. He has played some first base for the Dodgers in the past. But then they're looking at a hole maybe in the outfield. So the Dodgers definitely have options. They don't have to re-sign Justin Turner at all. And in fact, I don't necessarily expect them to maybe get a deal done just because Turner's up there in age. This is going to be his last real chance at getting a good contract. And if I were in that situation, I think that I would have to go with the money after I've already won a World Series and I've done everything I want to accomplish. Maybe it's time to go and cash in just a little bit more than maybe he has in the past. And because of that, it's just going to be very interesting to see if the Dodgers are going to find another third baseman, or if they're going to move somebody somewhere, or what they're going to do. The one question I do have, though, is are they deep enough? What if somebody sustains a season-ending injury? What's that going to do to the Dodgers' hopes, even if it's not one of their amazing pitchers? What if it's not Kershaw or Dustin May or Trevor Bauer or Walker? What if it's somebody much more, I wouldn't say important, but somebody that plays every day? What if instead of a reliever getting hurt and missing a couple days, what if it's Max Muncy? What if it's Corey Seager? What if it's Mookie Betts? What are they going to do then? Do they need more depth, or do they sign anybody else? It's going to be interesting, and every team has weaknesses, and that's not necessarily a bad thing at all. It makes the game more exciting. But for right now, I think the Dodgers are in a very good place. I think the Trevor Bauer signing is incredible for them. I mean, and if he can keep up what the pace that he has been at, other than maybe the 2019 season, but maybe go back to the 2016 season where he was a key part in the Indians' trip to the World Series, where they only had two starting pitchers with Corey Kluber and Trevor Bauer, and then they had to have Josh Tomlin out there throwing 6 innings for them just because they were so hurt in pitching. Or if he is able to keep up his Cy Young stats from last season, it's going to be interesting. I'm really high on the Dodgers, and everybody else should be. I think that the Dodgers are likely to win the NL West. I do think the Padres have a real shot at winning that as well. I think the Padres might have a better shot if Clevenger weren't hurt. I think that if Clevenger weren't hurt and they had still made all of these signings and trades, I think that the Padres might have been the favorite out in the West. But I think that because of the Trevor Bauer signing, that it sort of shifts the pendulum back into the Dodgers' favor. And no, anything can happen in baseball. Who knows? The Dodgers might not be able to find the strike zone on the mound, and they might not be able to, hit water if they fell off a boat. But as unlikely as that is, it's definitely going to be a fun season to watch them. I am very excited for the season, and I miss baseball so much. I know that everybody listening to the podcast also misses baseball as much as I do, and it's fun to get excited about transactions like these. It's fun to get excited about the Francisco Lindor and Carlos Carrasco trade to the Mets, and then pretend like you know how much that is going to impact one way or the other. And this is so fun just to go over the transactions, but at the end of the day, it's still the athletes on the field that have to make the tough plays. They have to do everything that they can so that they can win the World Series. And who knows, maybe the squad that the Rockies put together out in the NL West are going to be the best team baseball has ever seen. It all really just depends on what happens on the field, and because of that, it's going to be a fun season, especially out in the NL West. Now, don't go anywhere. We're going to take a short break in just a few moments. We're also going to go over the free agency landscape, who is left, who went where. We're going to discuss some trades, specifically the Mets trade for Francisco Lindor and Carlos Carrasco, which I've already mentioned a couple times. We're going to mention Trevor Bauer a little bit. But for the most part, we're going to be asking what the free agency landscape looks like, who might not get signed, who might get signed, who should get signed. And then after that segment, we're going to discuss what free agent signing was the most important or will be the most important. And finally, I have the top 10 baseball movies of all time. Now, this is my list, and everybody is entitled to their own opinion. But I do gotta say, I think I put together a pretty good list. Let me know in the comments and everything what you guys think. Reach us on Twitter, subscribe to us on YouTube, all of that fun stuff. And we'll be right back in just a moment.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Everybody, welcome back to the GSMC Base Podcast, the podcast all about Major League Baseball. And in this segment right here, we're going to be talking about the free agency landscape. We're going to try and see who has signed, who has yet to sign, and we're just going to get right into it right here. So the first player that I really want to talk about is George Springer. George Springer, obviously a all-world athlete. He is fantastic, and he recently just left the Houston Astros to sign with the Toronto Blue Jays. The 31 center fielder signed a $150 million deal to go there, and he has gone on record saying that he decided to go to the Blue Jays because they're built to win, and I think it's definitely an interesting choice. I mean, obviously the money is one of the biggest, if not the biggest reason to go from Houston to Toronto. And I think that signing is going to be really, really important for them in the future, especially if Springer can keep his numbers where they are ever since breaking into the league in 2014. He has been an absolute stud defensively and so important offensively for the Astros, and he was vital to them winning he was vital to them winning the World Series a few years ago. And because of his loss or him leaving the Astros, I should say, it leaves a big hole in the outfield for the Astros. And the Astros did recently re-sign Michael Brantley as well to a $31 million deal, and that is going to keep the bat of Michael Brantley in the offense, but he hasn't necessarily played too much defense lately, and that's because he does have a big history of injuries. And when he was with the Indians, the reason that they didn't sign him, and the Indians have actually had a lot of trouble in the outfield, they've been struggling to find decent outfielders for the last few years, is because Michael Brantley was their left fielder, and after a while, he just couldn't get onto the field anymore, and that is a huge reason that the Indians decided to let Brantley go. And I think that the Astros definitely took a hit there, but I think that they will still bounce back. The Astros have a fantastic organization, and they have a lot of talent still, even with Altuve getting up there and with Michael Brantley being up there, and them having Zach Greinke, who is also up in the age category as well. Now, the next guy that I want to talk about is Aldernon Simmons, and he was so fantastic for the Angels. MLB ranked him the number one. MLB Network and all of them over there ranked him as the number one shortstop up there. Now, personally, I don't know if he is number one, but he is definitely the best defensive player in the game right now. Without a doubt, he is the best defensive shortstop in the game. And as we know all too clearly, especially Ranger fans, that defense is such a big part of the game. A few years ago, I'm making a callback to where the Rangers were just a couple outs away from making it to another World Series, if I'm remembering correctly, and their MVP, their slugger, their center fielder, Josh Hamilton, just didn't look a ball in, and they ended up losing that game, and they ended up losing the series, and the Rangers haven't been back there since. They just haven't been where they were. And Aldernon Simmons just signed with the Twins, and I think that's going to be a big signing for them, especially because they've lost a few key pieces, especially Trevor May out of the bullpen. Trevor May, who signed with the New York Mets, and we'll get into the Mets in just a little bit. But Trevor May was a huge part of their team, and he recently signed a decent deal with the New York Mets to come out of the bullpen for him, and I think that's going to help out the Mets incredibly as well. Marcus Stroman re-signed with the Mets after being traded there in this past season. But it is going to be interesting to see where people go. Michael Wacha was with the Mets, and now he signed a deal with the Rays. Adam Wainwright is still available. It's going to be interesting to see where he goes, if he still stays with the Cardinals. He has a huge history of injuries, and that's kind of been his downfall, because for a long time, especially when he first got into the league, he was one of the best pitchers in the league, and injuries and everything like that has just damaged his production, and it does with so many other people. And the next guy I want to talk about is DJ LeMahieu, who re-signed with the Yankees. A lot of big free agents are going to New York, whether it's the Mets or the Yankees. LeMahieu just signed with the Yankees a few days ago, and he signed a very big contract for the 32-year-old second baseman, and that contract is worth about $90 million. But LeMahieu's production offensively is what got him that contract. But I think the most interesting sign for the Yankees is the signing of former Rangers and former Cy Young Award winner for the Cleveland Indians, Corey Kluber. Corey Kluber signed an $11 million deal just a few days ago as well. Obviously, free agency is not that old, but pitchers and catchers do report in less than a week, and it's going to be incredibly interesting to see who signs where, what pitchers are still available, and where they're going to end up. And if they're late signees to spring training, who is going to be ready for the season and who's going to need a few weeks to get back into the game. Another huge free agent that hasn't signed, though, is Ian Kennedy. And Ian Kennedy has had a fantastic career, first with the Diamondbacks and now recently with the Royals, and he has made a very smooth transition from the starting pitcher's role to now a relief pitcher. And he has been very effective for the Royals the last few years. He's still a free agent, so we don't know where he's going to sign. It is kind of likely that he might re-sign with the Royals if they can get the money worked out. Although he is up in age, he is 36 years old, and because of that, it does make it harder for people to be signed. I mean, once you get up to that age, if you don't already have a big deal in place that teams are already paying for you, you're not going to get the deals that you were getting just a couple years ago, just because production in baseball specifically tends to fall off so dramatically that there's nothing more to give. These owners don't have the faith that you're going to be able to live up to a 4-year, $35 million contract if you're 38 years old. That's just not going to happen. The owners aren't going to make that deal because that production isn't going to be there. Like, Howie Kendrick is still a free agent for the Nationals, but he's listed as a DH. He's 37 years old, and he was so important to them winning the World Series 2 years ago, but at the same time, he's 37. And it's going to be harder and harder for guys like him to be signed. It's going to be harder for people like John Lester to get signed, even though he did just sign a 1-year contract with the Nationals. Now, people like Derek Holland, who are 34 but haven't had the career that they looked to have when they were very young. Derek Holland, of course, starting with the Texas Rangers, had a fantastic run with the Rangers for a very long time back in the early 2010s and late aughts, when the Rangers were one of the best teams in baseball. He's just not going to get the money that he probably could have gotten had his career gone in a different way, just because of his age. People know who he is now. And that's not a slight against Derek Holland. It's not a slight against him at all. It's just people know who he is. He's no longer that ace that you were going to look for, much like King Felix. Derek Holland, was just with the Pirates, but King Felix Hernandez, is a 34-year-old pitcher who was last with the Braves, and I think right now he might get a minor league deal. But if he gets a minor league deal, that doesn't guarantee that he's going to make the big leagues, not even for a team like the Orioles. And the Orioles just haven't been good the last few years, so they're going to have to basically rebuild their entire farm system until they can get a bunch of good pieces in place. So I don't expect too many big signings to come out of Baltimore, just because I think the last big signing they had was Jonathan VR, and he just wasn't very, like, he was good for them, but he didn't make enough of a difference. That one person isn't going to turn the Baltimore Orioles around, and as tough as that is to hear, that's just what it is. And unfortunately for Oriole fans, it's hard to care about a team that just isn't where they should be. Now, Cesar Hernandez is another guy I want to talk about. Cesar Hernandez actually did just re-sign with the Indians. He is likely going to be playing second base again, although the Indians do find themselves at a hole in shortstop because of that huge blockbuster trade that the Indians had with the Mets to get Francisco Lindor and Carlos Cookie Carrasco. And I think that is one of the biggest teams this year. And I know you guys have already heard me talk about the Mets, but I'm really high on the Mets just because of how many moves they've made. They have a depth, and they have a really good bullpen depth. Though I'm trying not to get ahead of myself here, but they have a good high-powered offense. Their starting pitching is just phenomenal with a trio of DeGrom, Syndergaard, and now Bauer, and then throw in Carlos Carrasco, who is their fourth starter. Carlos Carrasco, obviously, at the beginning of last season, was the number 3 starter on the Indians, and you're now making him the number 4. I think that is going to be so hard to beat. If the Mets can stay healthy, I will almost take them in any series that they go up against, just because of how good their pitching is. And they're so good at defense as well now, especially with the glove of Francisco Lindor. Another huge signing that we're going to be looking at today is the J.A. Happ signing. Happ signed with the Twins just a few weeks ago from the Yankees. Although he is 38 years old, I think it does fill the void that the Twins need. If he can still be as productive as he was on the Yankees, if he can still be as good as he was, I think that the Twins have a really good shot at repeating on winning the AL Central. Now, a good re-signing is Didi Gregorius. Didi just re-signed for a 2-year deal with the Phillies, and just like JT Realmuto, who is another huge signing that the Phillies have been able to keep their guys this year, and that is very important, because if the longer that these guys are playing together, the better chemistry that they're going to have, and it's going to reflect on the field. And the Phillies were close last year. I think if they put together a few pieces, and last year was a weird season though, because of COVID, a lot of games ended up not being played that should have been played, but a couple of guys on one team may have gotten COVID. Like the Mariners, for example, were a huge underdog story last year. I can't even believe that they were even in the playoffs. It was almost absurd because of how good that they actually were. And part of that is because they missed a lot of their games early in the season, and they were missing half their team at one point because of COVID. And we're going to see some of that this year. We're going to see a few game cancellations. We're going to see a few players miss a week or two. But with this season hopefully to be as long as a normal season, 162 game season, and maybe not with an all-star game. Well, obviously MLB is going to try to have the all-star game because that's where the money is. And but I'm sorry, I'm getting off track, guys, and I'm sorry about that. But the Mariners beat out the Phillies last year for that wild card spot because of who they played and who they didn't play. They got out of a few games and they won a couple tight games, and that's really just how baseball goes in general. Now, before I end this segment, I want to talk about Justin Turner. He is the biggest free agent that has left, and it's going to be interesting to see where he goes because he is up there in age, but he's still incredibly productive. Now, the Dodgers have blown past the luxury tax threshold by over $200 million, but the Dodgers still want to get Turner before he would sign somewhere else. But I don't know if the Dodgers want to go over that luxury tax any more than they already have. Now, I've heard of the Braves, I've heard the Nationals, I heard the Blue Jays, but that was before that they signed George Springer. I've heard the Rays. Personally, I don't expect Turner to re-sign just because I don't know if the Dodgers can work out that money. Turner is nearing the end of his prime at the age of 37, which is kind of crazy to say, but I don't know if the Dodgers can afford somebody of his talent. Now, if he goes to the Braves, that would increase their offense by a lot. They ranked in the low 20s last year in offense, but they're a very good defensive team, and he would help to that as well. And I think the Braves need most right now is obviously some hitting production. And that is absolutely what Turner has done in his career. He has absolutely destroyed the baseball. Now, the other team, and the team that I think would be the best fit for him is the Nationals. I think that he would be a great fit with that squad. They have Trey Turner, Juan Soto, Kyle Schwarber, Josh Bell, Starlin Castro, Yan Gomes, Victor Robles, and a decent pitching staff. I think that if Justin Turner goes there, he would fill the void he would fill the spot that Anthony Rendon had when they won the World Series. And I think that is the best spot for him. I think that they have I don't think they have the most money. I think obviously the Rays or the Braves could offer him more, but I think that the best fit for him would be the Nationals. Now, I also want to talk about Jackie Bradley Jr., who is the 31-year-old center fielder from Boston. He's looking to get a 4-year deal. I don't know if he can get it, but if he can get it and re-sign with Boston, that would definitely make Boston fans a lot happier than when they traded Mookie Betts just about a year or so ago, before the last season. And then the Dodgers obviously re-signed him to a massive deal this past year as well. The final person that I want to get into is Yasiel Puig. And Yasiel Puig took a long time to get signed last year. He had an okay season last year. It wasn't great, but it wasn't awful. I think that it is unlikely that he's going to be signed until, I would say, around maybe late April, early May. And I think that teams are going to see who they have in the outfield and who they want to put in the outfield. And if they're really lacking on offense, they might go with Yasiel Puig, even though he has had some issues in the past, off-the-field issues, but since getting demoted a few years ago and then coming back to the league, he hasn't really had that many off-the-field issues, I should say. But I don't know if he is a high enough on the priority because he is expensive. He was an all-star. He is a heck of a player. And if he ends up going to the or if he ends up getting signed, I don't know if the teams that are willing to sign him are going to necessarily want to put him in front of their young guys who are just now getting into their own. They're just getting their own reps and things like that. In the next segment, we're going to be looking at what free agent signing or what trade was the biggest, which one's going to make the biggest impact and ultimately have the biggest impact on the landscape of free agency and potentially who brings the most wins to their new team or even their old team. And then after that, I got you guys top 10 baseball movies of all time. And I'll let you in on a little secret right here. Angels in the Outfield just missed the cut.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
And welcome back, everybody, to the GSMC Base Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. In this segment right here, we're going to talk about what free agent signings or what trade, basically what acquisition was the best, and we're going to go over a few teams here and just see who is going to make the best improvement to their new team. Now we're going to start off in the NL Central. The Cubs signed Jock Peterson to a 1-year, $7 million deal. And this signing necessarily isn't that exciting, but I think with the Cubs' loss of Kyle Schwarber in the offseason as well, that it's going to They have that offensive output back. He is an absolute monster of a hitter. And I think that he actually gives the Cubs a little bit better defensive output in the outfield than Schwarber did. Now, next team we're going to talk about is the Reds. They signed Sean Doolittle to a 1-year, $1.5 million contract. And Doolittle had a rough year last season in Washington, but that's a lot of pitchers, a lot of players had down years, and for a lot of teams it was hard to get into the rhythm because they started spring training and then all of a sudden they couldn't have spring training anymore, and it was just hard, especially for pitchers at the beginning of the year, to get back to where they were, which is what makes Trevor Bauer's performance last year as well as Shane Bieber for the Cleveland Indians, how dominant they were and how they were able to stay ready is super, super impressive. Now, the Reds signed D. Gordon to a minor league deal, but if the Reds can get some decent output out of D. Gordon, then that's going to help them offensively. That he has a career batting average of over 280, I believe. And if the Reds can get that offensive output out of him, that's going to help them. The Reds struggled in two huge spots last year, and that was bullpen pitching and getting guys on base. If I believe that they had the worst batting average as a team to ever make the playoffs, and that is second to only the Cubs I believe actually, excuse me, that the Cubs were second only to the Reds all time of the worst batting averages. And one team that didn't have a bad batting average last year was the St. Louis Cardinals. And the St. Louis Cardinals recently made a trade to go and grab Nolan Arenado from the Colorado Rockies. And it looks like the Rockies are definitely going to be sellers. They're definitely going to try and rebuild now. It looks like they're going to hang on to Trevor Story for at least a little bit. They might get rid of him. They might not. It might just be one of the decisions that they've decided to choose Trevor Story over Nolan Arenado. And I think this makes the Cardinals a lot more dangerous. I definitely think they're the favorite to win the NL Central. I just don't see the Reds with them losing Trevor Bauer and then not having just that number one guy. I mean, they have Luis Castillo and they have Sonny Gray and Wade Miley, and that's a great lineup. But at the same time, you don't have the guy who just won the Cy Young, and with how bad they were offensively last year, I don't necessarily see them scoring enough runs with the rest of the bullpen to win enough games to outpace the Cardinals. And anything can happen. It's just I don't see that as likely as I do the Cardinals just winning the division outright. And the next thing we're going to talk about, we're going to go out west and we're going to go to the NL West. And we're going to talk about the Arizona Diamondbacks pickup of Joakim Soria. The Diamondbacks definitely needed a closer. They have a lot of problems. They're definitely in a rebuild phase. They had a couple really strong years where they were in contention and they could just never put it together. They were always a couple pieces away. But the signing of Joakim Soria for a 1-year contract for about $3.5 million is a good signing for them when they can get the lead and keep the lead. And I mean, last year they were notorious for blowing their saves. It is what it is, but now they have Joakim Soria, who's a fantastic closer and should be fantastic for them. The next the next acquisition we're going to talk about is the Trevor Bauer signing to the Dodgers. Now, last offseason, I should say, they traded for Mookie Betts, and then they went and won the World Series, and then they added the reigning NL Cy Young Award winner to probably be their number 2, if we're going to be honest. I think Walker Buehler's still going to be their number 1, and I think Clayton Kershaw is going to be a good number 3 for them. But Trevor Bauer, I think, might be able to win out that opening day spot, but I wouldn't go that far as to guarantee it, especially after how amazing Walker Buehler has been the last few seasons. Now we're going to go and move toward the Padres. And the Padres have a very interesting team right now. So let's go over some of the moves that they've made this offseason. So the first thing that they do was they declined the 1-year option from Mitch Moreland, which freed up cap space. And then Mike Clevenger agreed to a 2-year, $11.5 million extension, which buys out his remaining years of arbitration. And then after that, they went and signed a utility outfielder, Greg Garcia, And Tommy Pham also has arbitration rights with San Diego. They traded for Blake Snell, sending catcher Francisco Mejia to the Rays. The Rays definitely know what they're doing with pitchers. I think they're going to be fine, and I think they've viewed that Blake Snell is worth getting rid of for the haul that they got. They got 2 pitching prospects, a catching prospect, and Francisco Mejia, who's ready to go with the bat. Now, he hasn't been great in his time in the bigs yet, but he is still young, and he has a lot of time to develop. They also traded for Hugh Darvish, and they got a catcher back because they just got rid of one of their catchers, and they sent a few prospects to the Cubs for Hugh Darvish. Now, let's go over that pitching lineup right now. Now, obviously, Mike Clevenger is going to be out for the season. He just recently, after signing that contract extension, he ended up getting Tommy John surgery, and he's going to miss all of the 2021 season. But they still have one heck of a pitching rotation. They have Hugh Darvish, Blake Snell, Joe Musgrove, Chris Paddock. Chris Paddock, if you don't remember, was arguably the best pitcher on the Padres at the start of last season. And then they traded for Mike Clevenger and made a few deals, and the Padres are gearing up for one heck of a run. They also have Dinson Lamet, who last season pitched almost 180 innings with a 13-7 record, posting a 3.32 ERA with over 200 strikeouts and just over 60 walks. That's going to be one heck of a pitching rotation. And then next season, if they can retain a lot of these guys and get Clevenger back, watch out, because they are going to be so fun to watch. But now we got to go over to the AL. And first we're going to start off with the Blue Jays signing of George Springer to a 6-year, $150 million contract. Now, the Blue Jays have a great young team. It's pretty ridiculous how good that young team is and how talented they are, with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and so many other players. But the Blue Jays with this signing have proven that they are all in right now. That this signing might make the Blue Jays the favorite in the AL East, because while the Yankees are always going to be good, the Red Sox last year took one of the biggest steps back that I've ever seen. And part of that was just because they weren't healthy. And that is definitely a very good reason for them to sort of fall off. And I don't necessarily think that they fell off too much, other than just not being healthy. The next signing that I want to talk about is the Boston Red Sox's Garrett Richards. Now, the Red Sox definitely struggled with starting pitching last year, and him signing to the Red Sox is going to give them a little bit more stability. He signed a 1-year, $10 million contract, and because of his signing, I think that the Red Sox could potentially get a wild card bid if they come back healthy, and if they perform to what they were at just a couple years ago when they were World Series contenders. And we're going to go from Boston now to their hated rival, the New York Yankees. The New York Yankees signed Corey Kluber. And Corey Kluber, for the last few seasons, has had some injury issues in Texas and a few injury issues when he was still with the Tribe in Cleveland. But I think that his signing there is going to give them a decent number 2, or even a number 3. If Kluber can come back healthy and be near where he was when he won his 2 Cy Youngs with the Cleveland Indians, it's going to be huge behind Garrett Cole and potentially behind Luis Severino and potentially above Jameis Talion. And the Yankees obviously re-signed DJ LeMahieu, and they still have Aaron Judge. They still have Giancarlo Stanton. They still have Gleyber Torres. They still have Clint Frazier, Aaron Dix, Gary Sanchez. And that offense is definitely not the problem. And with the Kluber signing, I think that it is going to give them the best option for a solid number 2, a solid middle-of-the-guy rotation that is going to get you some key wins here and there. And now we're going to go to the AL Central. We're not going to talk that much about the AL West. I don't think that they had many signings or had many decent signings. I don't expect much to come out of the AL West, if I'm going to be honest. But the AL Central has had some very, very interesting shakeups. The Cleveland Indians obviously lost out with the Lindor trade. They're going to miss him. They have a decent lineup still, but they also traded away Carlos Carrasco. They got a lot of prospects in return. But the biggest signing for them and biggest acquisition for them was getting Eddie Rosario from the Twins. Obviously, he was a free agent, but they're still taking away from their toughest competition over the last few years and filling one of the biggest needs that they had, which is absolutely the outfield. They have had a revolving door out there in the outfield for the last probably 5 years, ever since Michael Brantley started to get hurt toward the end of his tenure in Cleveland. They haven't had very much stability out there. They've traded for a couple right fielders in the years past with Jay Bruce and with Yasiel Puig, and that has ignited some sparks, but I don't know if the Indians are still there. I don't know if the Indians still need or are still just that one piece away, just that one outfielder away like they were for a few years. But I do think that it's going to give them some really good stability. Eddie Rosario is a fantastic outfielder, and he's going to give them a lot of stability in the outfield, and that's what the Indians really need right now. They're going to be good offensively. They still have Jose Ramirez. They still have Roberto Perez. They did lose Carlos Santana, and we're going to talk about that in just a second. But even with that loss, they're still going to have a decent offense. They're going to steal a lot of bases this season. They're going to get a lot of extra base hits. I think they're going to play a lot of small ball with Tito Francona at the head of what is the Cleveland Indians right now. He is a fantastic manager. Obviously, he's one of the greats, definite Hall of Famer. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how he deals with the loss of such a key piece like Francisco Lindor, and the loss of one of the best best arms in baseball still, even though he is now probably a 2 or a 3, maybe even a 4. Carlos Carrasco was still dominant and still very, very good at what he does, which is why the Mets wanted him. And I think that he's going to be a good acquisition for the Mets as well. Next, we're going to go to the Royals, who signed Carlos Santana. He signed a 2-year, $17.5 million contract with them. The Royals definitely needed an on-base guy. And if there's one thing that Carlos Santana does, is he has one of the best eyes in the game. He takes walks. He doesn't force he doesn't force a swing if he knows that it's better for him to just get on base. He takes pitches, he gets on base, and that's exactly what the Royals needed. And he provides really good defense out there. If they have him at first base, if they have him at DH, then he's going to do fantastic. He's going to do absolutely fantastic with the bat. I expect great things from him right there. And the final team that I want to talk about in this segment right here is the Twins signing Aldernon Simmons. The Twins needed a shortstop so bad, and they got the best defensive shortstop in the league. He signed a 1 year, $10.5 million deal. Simmons obviously leaving from the Angels to come to the Twins. And I think now that the Twins have the best shortstop in the AL Central now, and I don't think it's even close. I mean, he's not going to hit a lot of home runs. The Twins are still going to hit so many home runs. It might be a little bit less because the MLB is changing the ball a little bit for this upcoming season to try and reduce the home runs and try and make the game a little bit more exciting. But nevertheless, I think it's going to be very impressive to see what they do. In my opinion, I think the Twins are the best team in the Central right now. I think the White Sox are still good, but the White Sox and Indians are going to clearly be tier 2, and I think the Twins are going to be the gold standard in that division, at least for the next few years. And things can change. The Indians or the White Sox might make a few trades and win a few games here or there that they might not otherwise win and end up winning the division. We don't know. But I have a special treat for you guys. In this next segment, we're going to go over the top 10 baseball movies of all time. Get ready.
Want to know the latest in soccer? Then listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast. From MLS, the World Cup, and the Premier League, we've got you covered. The latest updates, the hottest matches, and news on the league's top players. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast.
David Beckham scores the goal to take England all the way to the World Cup finals.
Listen now.
And welcome back to the moment that you have all been waiting for. My top 10 baseball movies of all time. Now, I have a few honorable mentions, and I'm probably going to give them out around before number 2. I might throw a couple of honorable mentions in there, but let's get into it. So at number 10, I have Mr. 3000. Now that's a Bernie Mac movie. Very funny. He plays for the Milwaukee Brewers. And the movie starts out as him being one of the best baseball players of all time. He gets his 2000th hit of his career and then just retires on the spot. Immediately after the game, he's like, I'm done. I don't want to be here anymore. And then he goes and opens a whole brand in Milwaukee called Mr. 3000. And he has a bar called Mr. 3000. He has a couple car dealerships, if I'm remembering correctly. And ultimately, he ends up finding out that one of his games was recorded twice, and he only actually had 3 less hits than he originally thought. So he had 1,997 career hits, and because of that, he ended up coming back, I believe, near the age of 40. And the Brewers at the time in the movie, they weren't very good, so they brought him back as sort of a publicity stunt. And he ends up only getting 2 hits the rest of the season, and ends up rebranding everything as the 1,999 brand. And he ends up falling in love with a reporter, and they live happily ever after. So on, the movie ends. So that's Mr. 3000. At number 9, I have 42. And I wanted to put this higher, but I just have such respect for the rest of the movies on this list that I couldn't. And Chadwick Boseman was fantastic as Jackie Robinson, and Harrison Ford was incredible as Branch Rickey, the former owner of the Dodgers organization. And the movie is just so well made. It captures everything, or not everything, because you can't capture everything that Jackie Robinson went through, but I think it does a really good job at showing how he was dealing with everything that he was going through at the beginning of his career. And ultimately, it's one of the best baseball movies and one of my favorite movies of all time, just because of how amazing that the story was. And now my number 8 movie is it's an interesting choice, I think. I chose 8 Men Out as my 8th favorite baseball movie just because, as my 8th movie. I apologize, I'm having trouble reading my own list right here, but yeah, 8 Men Out at number 8, and it follows the Chicago White Sox, who then became infamously known as the Chicago Black Sox. And essentially, what the movie goes over is how everybody on, or not everybody, but a lot of players on the Chicago White Sox decided to take money from the mob because the mob was betting heavily on the Reds because the Reds were such underdogs. So they decided to fix the games and give a lot of money to the players who at the time were actually kind of underpaid. They worked regular jobs in the off season, and a lot of guys actually worked regular jobs during the season. The owners paid them an okay wage, but it wasn't what they needed for how often they travel, for their training. A lot of guys were living in super small apartments that they showed in the movie. But the reason that I put it this high on my list, and it's not an honorable mention, the movie showed that Shoeless Joe Jackson didn't take any money. But the owners and the mob and the brand new commissioner needed a fall guy. And they supposedly did an investigation, and because of their investigation, they banned 8 players for life, and one of those being Shoeless Joe Jackson. And nobody really ever heard from Shoeless Joe Jackson ever again, and it's kind of a sad story, just because he didn't do everything right. In fact, he was the best player in the series, and they still banned him essentially for his colleagues' doings and them throwing the game. And ultimately, that's a pretty sad story. And that's why it's on the list at number 8. And number 7 on this list is a very fun movie. It's super fun, and it shows that girls are just as capable of doing anything that a guy can do. And that's one of the best aspects of this movie. It's also super funny. It's A League of Their Own at number 7. And it has such a great cast. It has Gina Davis, Tom Hanks, Madonna, Lori Petty, Rosie O'Donnell, John Lovett. So many great actors and actresses. And basically, if you aren't familiar with the movie, it takes place during World War II, where a lot of Major League Baseball players and a lot of young men who probably would have been playing in the major leagues right there at that specific point in time were obviously overseas fighting. So they decide to get these baseball owners decided to make a baseball team and a baseball league for women. And it's such a good movie. They the league only ran for a couple of years because the war ended and they ended up going back with men, but the things that these women did were amazing, and it brought people back together. It gave people an escape for a few minutes in real life, and I think this movie is a very good. It's a very good homage to the actual women who forfeited a lot to be in that spot. And it also gave us one of the greatest lines in baseball movie history. There's no crying in baseball, where Tom Hanks is yelling at the girls, and that's one of the best scenes in baseball movie history. Now, number 6 is a personal favorite, and so is number 5. And I don't think you're going to see a lot of lists that have these movies on the list in any aspect, not even in an honorable mention. And number 6 is The Final Season. And in The Final Season, it looks at this super small town of Norway, Iowa. And their school is going to be merging with their rival school after this following season, and they're going to have a joint baseball team. And the movie follows a high school team trying to win state in the final year. So basically, when the school announces that they're going to be merging with another school, they're nationally recognized, and actually the National Coach of the Year leaves Norway, and his assistant coach, Kent Stock, played by Sean Austin, who wasn't the assistant at the time, but ends up getting that job. And they follow the whole movie odds are against them. They're facing a major league prospect in the state championship game, who's throwing high 90s, and these kids have never seen high 90s like that before. They end up, before the game, actually going and getting some of their dirt some of the dirt from their field, because they're never going to get to play there ever again, even the guys who are returning, not even the seniors. So they go there, and they all have dirt, and they get to the field, and they put their dirt on the state championship field. And it sort of becomes their home game. And they end up winning the state championship, and it's a really good feel-good story. Has an amazing cast, and just one of the most underrated, I think, baseball movies of all time. And that brings us to number 5, and I think is the most underrated movie of all time, and at least in the baseball sense. It is, without a doubt, 61. It is one of my favorite baseball movies of all time. It follows the home run race between Mickey Mantle and Roger Maris. And in 1961, Babe Ruth had the home run record. It wasn't Mark McGwire, it wasn't Barry Bonds, it wasn't Sammy Sosa. And Babe Ruth had hit 60 home runs, and in the 61 season, they extended the schedule to 162 games. And so Roger Maris had a little bit of extra time to get that last couple home runs. But during the home run race, and in Roger's entire career, while he was in, Roger Maris's entire career, when he was in New York, he was always in the shadow of Mickey Mantle. Everything that he did great, the fans and the media there couldn't enjoy it. And he won a couple MVPs and one in New York, and the home run race between him and Mansell, who were really good friends, and they were actually roommates together. At least they were in the movie. And because of the media's portrayal of Roger Maris and how the fans just hated him because it's Mickey Mantle's town, there can't be a bigger star than Mickey Mantle, which is just so crazy to me, because anytime your team adds such a good player, an MVP caliber player, and an absolute stud, you should be happy and excited for him. He didn't cause any problems off the field. He just did what he just lived his life off the field, and then on the field he played baseball, and he did it very well. And the movie follows the home run chase, and Mickey Mantle ends up getting hurt toward the end of the race and ends up getting knocked out of the home run race because he couldn't finish the rest of the regular season. And Maris ends up hitting his 60th home run, I believe, right before what would have been the last game of the season for Babe Ruth. But he didn't hit his last home run until the last regular season game, and he hit his 61st. And at the time, people were very happy about it, but the commissioner's office decided to put an asterisk next to it because he hit it in more games than Babe Ruth. And because of that asterisk, Maris never got the credit that he deserved. And I just think that's just so common in baseball nowadays. Baseball purists hate change and they hate new stuff. They want everything to be the way that it was, and it's not. Things change, and in my eyes, that's one of the biggest, most egregious things to happen, is that Roger Maris didn't get the credit that he deserved, and I think he really actually did deserve quite a bit more credit. And now number 4, it's Moneyball. Moneyball is, it's so good, such a good movie. It has Brad Pitt and Jonah Hill, and they just cover one of the best movies of all time, and one of the best stories of all time, where the Oakland A's were trying to do something different and tried to reinvent the wheel a little bit, where they tried to find guys who would get them wins. They were basically trying to buy wins. And it doesn't work out for them in the end, but it is a great movie and a great ride. Now, number 3 is my second favorite baseball movie with Kevin Costner in it. It's Bull Durham, and a lot of people rank Bull Durham number 1. I think you can go with any combination of my top 3 movies. Bull Durham is about a catcher who is in the minor leagues. He's had a minor league career, got to the bigs for a short period of time, and he is brought in to catch this young hotshot kid. And basically, this movie is, it's a classic. What can you say about it? It's fantastic. And I'm not going to say too much about it because most baseball fans already know this movie. It's a classic. It has Susan Sarandon in it, and it's such a good movie. And at number 2, we have The Field of Dreams. And I know what you're going to say. How is it not number 1? My bias might be showing a little bit here, but Kevin Costner's Field is magnificent. I actually got to go there when I was a younger kid. I got to play baseball on the actual Field of Dreams. It was so cool. It was one of the coolest experiences of my life, and I'm never going to forget it. And the movie follows Kevin Costner and James Earl Jones, and they basically find these ghosts who need a place to play. And that's what it is. It's such a good movie, and people think that Kevin Costner's crazy until he builds it, and then everybody shows up to see these ghosts play. They see Shoeless Joe Jackson. They see Kevin Costner's character's dad. And he gets to have a catch with his dad one more time. And that, if that scene doesn't make you cry, I really don't know what will. And I have a few honorable mentions before I get to my number one pick. I have Angels in the Outfield, The Rookie of the Year. I have Cobb, The Babe. I also have The Benchwarmers, The Perfect Game, and Little Big League, and Hardball. And there's so many good baseball movies. But I gotta say that my number one all-time baseball movie has gotta be Major League. Major League is so good. It gives you Bob Uecker. It gives you Charlie Sheen. Oh my gosh, it gives you Wesley Snipes. It's so good. Oh my goodness. And I'm showing my Cleveland Indian bias here. I am a Tribe fan, and because of that, that's probably why the movie is number one, but I think it's just so funny. I think it follows such a good premise about a team and a city that hasn't won anything for a very long time. They finally get that in Major League, and the movie came out in the mid to late 80s, and Cleveland still had to wait another 30 years before they even got a championship. And that wasn't even a baseball championship or a football Super Bowl. It was a basketball championship. And the Indians still haven't. They've made it to the World Series. Obviously, they had probably the best World Series of all time between the Cubs. It went to Game 7, extra innings. There was a rain delay. Oh my gosh. But the Indians fans still don't have that yet. They're still longing for that. And I think that this movie and Major League 2 are the closest thing that Indian fans are going to get for a while. And that's sad, but at the same time, it definitely is interesting. I think that this movie is just well-rounded. It has a great comedic performance in it. It is dramatic, and you also get the love story, and I think it's just such a good movie that you can't not have it on your list, if not definitely number one. And I know a lot of guys and a lot of people have The Sandlot up there, and they have Hardball up there, or The Benchwarmers, or Bad News Bears. And the list goes on. And there's just so many great baseball movies out there that it's hard to pick a number one. And I don't love ranking stuff anyway. I think that, especially cross-pollination, cross-sports rankings and stuff like that. And I just like to appreciate the greatness while it's there. And for that, I think that the Major League Baseball is my number one movie. But let me know, rate us on Apple Podcasts, GSMC Base Podcast, and comment if you're listening on YouTube. Tweet us at Twitter. Let us know what your top baseball movies are. I want to thank everybody for listening to the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I would like to ask you guys to remember to subscribe to the show, write a review. That's really going to help us out. And if you can please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you so much. We really appreciate everything, all the help we get. Let us know if we can improve anything. If you want to hear about something, just let us know in the comments, and we'll do our best to follow through. So thank you guys for listening.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.